Just yesterday I came across a tweet on how easy Pokémon has become and how this is just because you are not 5 years old anymore, going full on with your starter Pokémon. And while this wasn't the video I had planned for today, I think it is a very interesting topic to give my opinion on and to read your opinions down in the comments. So hey, I'm Not So Ace Trainer, and are we just too mature for the franchise? Let's get into it. To give you the TLDR, I don't think this is just because we grew up and the games kept being made for the same target audience that it became easier. While I agree that Pokémon was never the highest difficulty RPG you could play, there were challenges that, even if not implemented by the developers themselves, made the games harder. The pool of Pokémon you had available was a lot smaller back in Gen 1, like for example, Dragonite was really strong, like I think it was the second highest stat Pokémon in that generation, but in order to get one yourself, you had to get the Dratini, which was hard enough, and then you had to level it up and grind it in order to get the Dragonite, and while this doesn't sound that bad for today's standards, it was pretty tough back then. So with a smaller pool of choices and grinding levels for hours and hours, maybe even days, there's an inherent difficulty to Gen 1. And it goes on into Gen 2 with the dreaded issues with the level curve, which basically made grinding very hard once more, even with the addition of the experience share. And let's not talk about how facing Whitney's Miltank out of nowhere made you head scratch trying to figure out what the hell you could do. And if you say, oh but you can do the Machop trade and easily beat Whitney, you are right, but that's because you know the trade exists. Those games were also made in a time where guides weren't that accessible. You wouldn't go on YouTube and search how to beat Whitney and get hit with a tutorial. Neither did the game ever tell you or hint that there was another way out of that situation. You had to, once more, spend time exploring in a very confusing city for the time, Goldenrod City, and grind in order to deal with it. This continued on for generations, with them constantly adding new stuff into the games to make them more complex. Gen 2 added held items, Gen 3 abilities, Gen 4 had the split, and Gen 5 added hidden abilities. Now, this information seems easier to digest as you grow older, but if they start adding those things to the trainers as well, it makes for some harder battles. I've seen it mentioned many times, but it was very common to deal with NPCs, be them gym leaders or Elite Four members, sometimes even regular trainers that had held items. The dreaded citrus berry on an important battle, like for example, trying to take down that tanky Walrein from Glacia in the Hoenn League only to be met with an HP recovery, or things like the strategical white herb from Flannery. These things made the battles harder than they would be. You don't have this challenge anymore. People will talk about the toughest battles you had to deal with from recent games, and they will likely talk about Ultra Necrozma and Volo, but those are just two in a pool of important battles being very easy to deal with. And these two battles aren't the best examples, since Ultra Necrozma is an incredibly strong Pokémon with extra boosts on its already pretty high stats, and Volo has the Giratina plus the Giratina Fake Out. They are special cases that can't simply be applied to every battle that should be hard. They work very well as RPG final bosses. They are unfair as it tends to happen in this genre, but they couldn't be how every single gym leader would be, for example. A good example about a feature that works against making the games a bit more of a challenge is the friendship feature, which recently made one of the hardest, what could have been one of the hardest Pokemon leagues ever, not that much of a problem to deal with. In BDSP, right from the first time you face the Elite Four and Champion, they have competitive inspired sets. They all have it. Held items, perfect IVs, EVs and natures. They are incredibly strong Pokemon trainers. If nothing worked against this, Cynthia would once again become the stuff of nightmares, but just by playing the game normally and building your team, you end up having the friendship mechanic triggered. Your Pokemon will survive when it KOs, they will recover from status conditions. It will make your life so much easier than it had to be. You will notice that I haven't mentioned the experience share being global as one of the problems, and that is because I don't feel like it is the problem. Even if you had to grind each specific Pokemon before entering the Pokemon League, the friendship mechanic would still ruin that. You would still have to deal with that after leveling up for hours and hours and hours. Something that takes away the most boring part of the whole thing, at least to me, is not the problem. The experience share became global in X and Y, but it wasn't that made those games easier. It simply removed the time-consuming part. You're getting a free Lucario, a very early fossil Pokemon, a very early Kanto starter, and then being met with very tame challenge from every single trainer. I mean, just look at Lysander's final battle team. No item besides the Gyarados. 2 of the Pokemon only have 3 moves. They could have put, I don't know, Moxie on Pyroar to make it a challenge, but no. With that said, and while I like having the experience share being global, I still defend you being able to turn it off if you want to. Also, in the more recent example, there's a reason why people battle against Gita, supposedly the strongest champion in Paldea, and leave wondering if she was hiding something. If she was truly the evil one all along and we'll only find out about it in DLC where we'll meet her true power. And that reason is because she was too easy. People don't want to believe that it was just the way it was supposed to be. Her team was not strong, there was nothing special about it. The order of Pokemon itself was weird. She could have opened with Glimmora, poisoned us, and then in the end just tried to sweep us with King Gambit, but they didn't do that. So, weirdly enough, as more things were introduced into the games, which didn't stop in Gen 5 because battle mechanics also add an extra layer to the whole thing, but weirdly enough, Pokemon became easier as it became more complex. I feel like everything stayed in VGC, you know, the playthrough is just a way to unlock everything you need to eventually compete. There's a very famous interview with Junichi Masuda where it talks about how Pokemon became easier because they had to accept the realities of modern life. Kids don't have time and have a lot competing for their attention, and those who grew up playing Pokemon are busier than before. This, to me, is the reason why the XP share isn't a bad thing. Still, I think it is important to make trainers that are supposed to be special, the gym leaders, the rivals, the Elite Four, the champions. I think it is important to make them feel special, to make them stand out from the youngster you just battled before entering the second town. That can be done just by making their Pokemon higher level, now that grinding is not a problem. That has to be done by using the mechanics that they implemented in their own games ever since Gen 2. So, did Pokemon become too easy just because we grew up and have a better understanding of how things work? I don't think so. I think it is undeniable that that plays a role in it, but it is also undeniable how there were many choices made ever since Gen 5, since that's when they first took away one of the Pokemon from the Elite Four's team, making it 4 instead of 5, but choices that affected how difficult the game is supposed to be. And in the strangest turn of events ever, the way to fix it is, to me, removing that friendship mechanic from affecting battles and then do it just like BDSP did with their gym leaders, key battles, and Pokemon League. And that is all I have for you today. I just felt like it was a very interesting topic and I wanted to read your opinions on it. So, what about you? How do you feel about the difficulty in Pokemon games? And if you're not happy, how would you fix it? Let me know in the comments down below. And now, like the video if you like it, dislike if you don't, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon content and also ring the bell so you know when the next video is out. You can follow me on social media and Twitter, stream there Wednesday to Sunday, not Saturday, or join our Discord. All the links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.